Hello and welcome to the next webinar in the series brought to you by Strengthening the Heartland. I'm Amber Letcher, one of the directors of the project, and we're really excited about our topic today, which is mindfulness-based interventions. We're very happy to see all of you, and we're looking forward to an exciting presentation. Before we get started, I have a couple announcements for you. If you're joining us live, you'll notice that you have a control panel where there's some information for you. First of all, there's a question or chat box, and you can share or type in questions at any time during the presentation. We will relay those to our speaker at the end, but you are free to enter those at any time. If you'd like to follow along with the presentation, we also have a handout linked in that control panel, so feel free to download that. And you will also be receiving a short survey to complete after the webinar is over. We ask that you complete these each time you watch one of our webinars. It gives us great feedback, and we also like to get your suggestions for future topics. So we look forward to that. And finally, if you would like to view more of our webinars, they are available to you free of charge on our YouTube channel. If you search for Strengthening the Heartland, you will find that channel. There's lots of webinars on there, and we update that pretty frequently. But with that, I will introduce our speaker for today. This is Dr. Baxlee Bynum. She is an assistant professor at Barry University, which is in, I'm assuming, sunny Miami, Florida, as I'm sitting here in snowy South Dakota. But the magic of technology has brought us together today, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about mindfulness. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So like you said, I'm in Miami, Florida. Mindfulness is really big down here. Kind of at every corner you see a yoga studio, but applying it into our clinical practice is something totally different. And the larger part of my clinical experience is in substance abuse treatment. So I worked in an outpatient substance abuse clinic for 3 years before I decided to come back to school, get my doctorate. Now I'm teaching at Barry. My specialization is clinical mental health counseling, but I teach in all core areas of our counseling program. But in my clinical work is when I really began becoming interested in mindfulness-based interventions and the importance and the efficacy of these interventions. So I saw my clients struggling with emotion control, emotion regulation, impulsivity control and regulation, stress, depression, cravings, memory, concentration, and even body image. And I started doing some independent research about mindfulness at this time. And I found that mindfulness touches and treats effectively all of the things that I just mentioned, which were the main struggles of my clients individually and in our group. So I started my research to support the interventions that I wanted to implement into my group. I knew that I had to do empirically supported treatment. I knew that I had to have a justification behind it. We're not just going into group counseling and individual counseling, doing whatever we'd like as an experiment. So I did my due diligence, and that's when I started really diving into mindfulness. I found a mindfulness-based relapse prevention program that is shown just as, if not more effective as our traditional cognitive behavioral model of relapse prevention. And I started implementing that in my outpatient groups, especially later on in treatment. And then throughout the time, I continued this. Today, I want to talk to you guys about just the general gist of mindfulness, what it is, how can we demystify this thing that we've been talking about for the past 10 years. And then I want to spend more time kind of focusing on interventions and things that you can take with you and use in your practice with your clients, or use on yourself as self-care in your daily lives. While there's research to suggest that this is clinically effective, there are also non-clinical benefits to just practicing mindfulness on a daily basis. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so what is mindfulness? The secular definition of mindfulness has a strong emphasis on paying attention without judgment to the present moment. So it's important for me to say that this is a secular definition, because it's important that this is an inclusive topic, something that a general audience can subscribe to and that accepts them in return. The history of mindfulness tells us that this is an Eastern healing practice. It comes from Buddhism. It comes from a lot of different, we have a long history. And now we're seeing that through research that this is something that we can use in our clinical practice, especially in mental health treatment and especially in relapse prevention treatment. So that while this is historically a spiritual activity, we can use this in a non-spiritual way. We find that a lot of people do turn it into a spiritual practice, but it doesn't have to be that they are not mutually exclusive. And I am making this a point because here, I'm from Alabama, so I'm a graduate of Auburn University, and my mother is a school counselor, and they had a big issue in the school implementing mindfulness practices to help children and adolescents calm down. They didn't like the word mindfulness. They didn't like the word meditation, that they have this strong emphasis on a separation between church and state. So we are just making it clear that mindfulness practices don't have to be spiritual practices unless you would like them to be. So mindfulness is defined by Kabat-Zinn. He's one of our early research superstars on mindfulness. He's telling us that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. We have another definition by Brown and Ryan. Mindfulness is the state of being attentive to and aware of what is taking place in the present. And then another one from Baer, mindfulness is a non-judgmental observation of the ongoing stream of internal and external stimuli as they arise. So themes that we see here are paying attention without judgment. So this means if I'm feeling a little stressed, I am aware, I'm paying attention of my stress, and I am not causing more stress by telling myself, oh, I'm stressed, I shouldn't be stressed, let's not be stressed. I'm saying, I'm stressed. And stress feels like clenching my teeth. I'm stressed. I know that stress feels like I'm stress sweating a little bit. And I'm acknowledging it, and I'm not judging it. I'm just accepting, this is how I feel, this is how I know I feel this way, and I'm able to move with it instead of repress it. Another theme that we see is in the present moment. So currently, how am I mindful of how I'm feeling right now in the present? So paying attention without judgment in the present moment. One image that I used when I was working clinically to explain mindfulness to my group is this. So can you guys see my pointer on my screen? Okay. We have this image of our person, and he has a full mind. Is he mindful, or are we mindful? Mindful is in the present moment. What you can see right in front of you at this time is what our cute little puppy is saying, and then mindful is this. This image perfectly describes the difference between having a full mind and practicing mindfulness. So it's so easy to think about everything going on around us. What do we have to do tomorrow? What's coming up in the future? What did I do in the past that I'm a little bit ashamed of? What do I regret? And this clouds our mind like this little cloud bubble and causes us to stress, worry, fear, becoming overwhelmed, ruminating on what's happened in the past, anticipating too far into the future. And this causes us a lot of different reactions. I think that when we shift over to the ability to be present in the moment, paying a particular attention in a non-judgmental way, we're able to achieve this state of peace. So the ultimate goal would be practicing to train our mind how to get to peace. Mindfulness involves focusing attention on the present moment. In a mindful state, the individual directs attention to the internal and external phenomenon at each moment of awareness. So what's going on right here and now? When we don't do that, we have both rumination and worry. This is thinking about things in the past, which are associated with increased severity of depressive symptoms, anxious symptoms, and are examples that typically don't focus on the present moment. This causes us to be preoccupied with automatically reoccurring thoughts from the past, such as causes and consequences of negative feelings. So rumination is focused on and guided solely by negative experiences, which inevitably draws our attention to the away from the present. Right? So being mindful allows us to direct our attention to the present moment in a non-judgmental and accepting way, thus eliminating or alleviating those feelings. And I hope that I am explaining this well. On this slide, I have a YouTube video, and it shares with us the science behind how mindfulness works. So we have direct connections in our brains to the way that we feel. And a series of studies have shown this to be true. For the sake of time and just for our connection and sound, I'm not going to play this YouTube video, but I wanted to share it with you if you have this material, or give you this link so that you can watch it on your own time. And it kind of reiterates some things that I've already said and things that I'll say as I go on with this presentation, and just shares with us how our minds and our bodies are biologically and just inherently connected with each other, and what research tells us about how our brains actually change through the practice of mindfulness. So I encourage you to watch this video. It's not too complicated, it's not too science heavy, so it's an easy watch. And I want to leave that there for you, and we'll go on. So why are we so interested in this subject? Because I guess since the 2000s, research has really taken off studying mindfulness, the efficacy of it, what supports, what treatments, what subjects. And so evidence suggests that mindfulness-based interventions and treatment models support depression. So we have mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. This is an 8-week program, and it specifically targets depressive symptoms and the way that we decide to think about what's going on internally and externally. So it teaches clients specifically these practices and how to take it home with them. Anxiety. So we have mindfulness-based stress reduction. Today, later on, I'm going to show you guys some interventions from this model. This is what I've been using lately, and this is what I've subscribed to. So I'll share a little bit of that later. Mindfulness-based treatments are important in substance misuse. So we have mindfulness-based relapse prevention, and you also have mindfulness to combat craving. What we know about substance abuse is that typically it is just a symptom of something much deeper. Even if there isn't a comorbid diagnosis, we're still treating mental health symptoms, probably at the forefront. And definitely throughout treatment. So if we know that mindfulness-based interventions help us with depressive symptoms, if we know that mindfulness-based interventions help with anxiety, then we know we're going to have a solid foundation to move forward, to focus on other issues like relapse, substance use, triggers, cravings, all of that stuff, communication, everything. We also have eating disorders. So we have a mindful eating program that was developed in the late 2000s that's empirically supported to work. I used mindfulness-based interventions to help my clients with body image. So I saw a lot of body image and eating disorder in my substance abuse treatment, and I found that this was actually really impactful and helpful in my practice. So we have some non-clinical benefits of mindfulness. So we have mindfulness to combat shame, mindfulness to create a better memory. There are actually studies that show that if you engage in meditation, you have a better memory. You can remember things farther in the past, and you have a better short-term and long-term memory. And also that if you engage in meditation on a daily basis, you actually live longer. And so we have right underneath this mindfulness to help slow down aging. So this is linked to stress. We know that our cortisol is our stress hormone. The stress induces this outburst of cortisol. This speeds up aging in your teeth, in your skin, in your hair. And so I think that this is also linked with the theory that if you engage in mindfulness, that you live longer. If you're feeling calmer, if you've found a way to alleviate stress, if you found a way to allow your brain to regenerate, to just recharge, then you're better in the long run in all of these areas. We also have mindfulness for mindfulness and decision making. So there's actually a military training that uses mindfulness-based interventions to help to not treat existing problems, but to help with productivity moving forward. So we have a better performance outcome when we learn these mindfulness-based practices, because the decision making becomes sharper. We become aware of our surroundings, aware of our internal processes, how we're responding to things, and all of that put together is why we're using mindfulness-based interventions in military training, so that they can be productive and increase performance in high stress situations. Okay, so I wanted to share with you guys, mindfulness expands beyond simple relaxation and into a type of cognitive-affective training that affects well-being. So something that I heard a lot, I was a clinician in substance abuse treatment in rural Alabama, and my client said, "I'm not doing that. This is just for hippies. You're going to turn us into these like hippies who just sit here and just hum all day long." And I said, "No, mindfulness is related to, but it's not the same thing as just meditation. Meditation is a mindful practice, yet it's much bigger than that. It is a cognitive affective training that supports our well-being, that helps us to recharge the way that we react and respond and are aware of things around us, and that rewires our brains." And it's proven by it's supported by our YouTube video earlier, and also many other studies that have MRI testing of brains and the way that we respond before and after and during mindfulness treatments. So I explained this to my groups multiple times in multiple timelines, and they are a little bit more accepting that this isn't just yoga, this isn't just sitting in a silent space, this isn't just a picture of a beautiful woman sitting on top of a mountain humming with her hands up in Indian style seating. It's much more than that, and it's something that we have to engage in and practice on a daily basis. So what we're trying to target here is not just one tiny thing, it's a lot of things. So we have these complex processes. We are targeting attention regulation, emotional coping, observation, and time perspective. So time perspective is what I talked about earlier. Are we ruminating on the past, or are we anticipating too far in the future? And becoming aware of whether we're doing one or two of those things, or doing them both at the same time, and taking a moment to step back and kind of rethink our perception of our present moment. So I am going to take a page from my mindfulness-based stress reduction book. So we have different techniques, and I will describe 3 formal mindfulness meditation exercises that are an inherent part of mindfulness interventions. These practices would be if you're doing this clinically, this would be performed during group sessions. This would be performed under the supervision of a mindfulness trainer. So in that case, that would be me. Participants are encouraged to perform them at home daily, and to help them do that, when they engage in these models of practice, participants receive audio files, which the trainer guides them through their respective meditations. Now, when I worked in rural Alabama, I didn't have all of the resources at my hands, but I would give my clients access to apps. So there are mental health apps, there are mindfulness apps, there are also YouTube channels that you can direct people to. Some people who were in situations where they didn't have access to Wi-Fi or computers, laptops, I could give them papers that just shared a guided practice that they could take home with them and do. And then also we would do them in group each day before beginning and after ending, and they could take that in their memory and do it at home with them. We had accountability partners that would help with this as well. So even if you can't buy, or if you're not funded to get the instruction manual or all the materials, there are ways that you can implement this into your practice. And I've shared my email at the end of this if you had any questions or kind of wanted to know how to get creative if you're in that situation. I'm here for it. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so I'll jump in to these practices. The first one is the body scan. The body scan, as the name suggests, entails bringing awareness to each part of your body. Participants are first instructed to pay attention to their posture and then to their breathing. Subsequently, attention is directed to different parts of the body. This starts with the feet and moves up from there. During the exercise, participants pay attention to different physical sensations present in a specific area of the body. After focusing attention briefly on a particular region, participants are instructed to move on to the next region. During the exercise, many find themselves easily distracted by thoughts, bodily sensations, or sounds. That's normal. How can you expect everyone to sit there and pay attention for so long? When distraction occurs, the participant is instructed to gently return attention to the body part at hand. Participants are encouraged to do so without blaming themselves or reacting with frustration, as the occurrence of distracting thoughts or sensation is inevitable. This is going to happen no matter who you are. To be okay with it and to know what to do when that happens next, that really makes all the difference. It seems so simple, but my clients had a hard time at first, and I can see that throughout the course of 8 weeks, get better and better each week, have so much more grace with themselves. It's really cool to see, actually. And there are also studies that show that mindfulness-based interventions help with the treatment of ADHD. In addition, when paying attention to the body, one might become aware of painful or unpleasant situations. So what if our clients have chronic pain? And then during this intervention, they're starting to notice their chronic pain. Instead of altering, ignoring, or suppressing these sensations of pain, we instruct our clients to notice them and to move with them moment by moment. So instead of rejecting the pain, to recognize the pain, identify where it's coming from, identify its intensity, and kind of this helps alleviate especially somatic symptoms, and it's different for each person. All right, I wish I could see and hear everyone because I would love to have questions and answers like throughout, but we will wait until the end. Next, we have seated meditation. This is just like the body scan. It's used as an object of attention. The seated meditation takes the breath as the main focus of attention. So participants are instructed to sit in an upward position with a straight back, preferably with their eyes closed. Some people, if they are dealing with issues of trust or security, they don't want to close their eyes. That's fine. They can keep their head down and keep their gaze down. They don't have to close their eyes. We don't have to be really rigid and strict. That totally goes against mindfulness practice anyways, but I would tell my clients at least kind of lower your head in respect of others. And then typically we get into a place of comfort, but until then, just lower your eyes, lower your head. After becoming briefly aware of the current posture, the participant directs attention to breathing. He or she notices the physical sensation of breathing, such as the air moving in the nostrils, the chest expanding. As soon as the mind begins to wander, the participant simply notices the distraction and without evaluating it, returns attention back to the breath in a kind way. And then these are kind of like the basic ones that I'm sharing with you guys. And then we have a 3-minute breathing space. Later on in the presentation, I will let us practice a breathing exercise that is this. So a 3-minute breathing space is a very brief mindfulness meditation that can help integrate mindfulness into everyday life. You can take it with you outside. of treatment. It enables one to disrupt automatic patterns of thinking and behavior and increase acceptance-based coping. The exercise commonly involves the following 3 steps. The first step involves asking yourself, where am I? How am I? What am I thinking? In this way, we step outside of doing for a moment, we disrupt our habitual patterns, and we become aware of our current experience. The second step involves a single focus of attention. Attention is directed away from thinking to breathing. During the third and last step, attention is expanded so that it includes the awareness of body sensations. So first is thinking, second is breathing, and third is feeling. How are we feeling? How are we breathing? What are we thinking about? And then we direct the attention back to the present. All right, then we have some informal practices. And I'm going to briefly go over this for the sake of time, but we have awareness of routine activities. So this is kind of an inventory. We have body awareness, which is the body doing body scans on our daily basis, paying attention to our posture, becoming aware of physical sensations. We can incorporate this outside. And then awareness of impulsive and reactive patterns. So this is a lot of awareness of our thoughts. And I'm actually happy to share with you all the full, like I can make PDFs of the full description of these, and that I can share with those, I can share those with you later, because I want to get into our practices. And I think that you can read it on your own. It'd be better than me just reading it out here anyways. This is our breathing activity. I am going to show a video of it because it is by Dr. Jha. She is a superstar in this field. She has a lab at Miami University and just produces a lot. She's going to lead us through this. And I invite you to, at your own place and at your own time, participate in this activity.
My name is Dr. Amishi Jha, and I am the Director of Contemplative Neuroscience for the Mindfulness Research and Practice Initiative and an Associate Professor of Psychology at the University of Miami. I'm a neuroscientist, and I study attention in my lab at the University of Miami. Wherever it is that attention goes, the rest of the brain follows. And in some ways, I think it's very important to consider this, right? Because what does this mean? It means that where you pay attention makes up the moments of your life. It actually makes up your life's experience. In my lab's work, we really think about mindfulness not simply as a concept, but mindfulness training as a cognitive training tool. And to understand this more fully, we should understand what the workout is, what the exercises are that make it cognitive training. So I want to review with you one very common and foundational mindfulness practice that's probably present in every single mindfulness-based program available. Something called mindfulness of breathing. This is what we call a focused attention practice. And let me just describe it to you. So in this exercise, the mindfulness of breathing exercise, we ask you to sit in an upright, stable, and alert posture, right? And for the period of time we're going to do this short practice, you can do it for much longer than I'm going to do here. Your job, or your task, if you will, is to pay attention to the sensations of breathing. And be very specific about how you pay attention to the breath. Use the coolness of air in and out of your nostrils, or the abdomen moving up or down, your shoulders, whatever it is, some specific bodily sensation tied to breathing will be what you will focus on for the period of this formal practice. So once you get settled, again with your eyes comfortably lowered or closed, you're going to focus in on the sensation that's most prominent to you tied to your breathing. And that's where I want you to really sustain your attention. You're going to hold that as the focus for the period of time. We're going to do this as a formal practice, right? Now, a second part of this instruction after you've selected your focus and you've committed to maintaining your attention there, is to pay attention to what arises in the mind. Notice when mind wandering occurs and your attention is moved off of this target for where your attention should be. When there might be thoughts, sensations, memories that arise that aren't about the breath at all. And when this happens, simply return your attention back to the breath-related sensations. Nothing special to do, just simply return the attention back to the breath. So try this for a few moments. And in the next moment or two, feel free to open your eyes again and return your attention back to my voice. Now, even in that very short practice, you got a sense of how attention maybe got a workout, right? I instructed you to focus on the breath, to maintain your focus on the breath. In some sense, it's like keeping that flashlight of attention firmly pointed toward the breath-related sensations and to actually hold it there, to maintain it there. I also fully acknowledge that the mind will wander. It's its tendency. And in fact, what we know about mind wandering is that it happens 50% of our waking moments. That's what we know from the research. Mind wandering is ubiquitous. It's common. There's no reason to fight against it. It's just the nature of the mind. If you are conscious, you are going to have mind wandering happen. But for this formal period of time in which we've dedicated our attention to be focused on the breath, we do something different when mind wandering happens. We actually note its occurrence, and then we redirect our attention back. The sequence of events in this practice are actually to focus, sustain attention, notice, and redirect it back to the breath. This is what we might call the push-up of a mindfulness of breathing exercise. And I hope that you're getting a sense now of repeatedly doing this for, let's say, a 5 to 10 to 20-minute exercise may actually not only engage attention, but strengthen it by exercising it over and over again. So when you think about doing this.
Okay, I'm going to take Dr. Jha away, and I hope that you all were able to engage in that brief breathing exercise, in that push-up, she says. This is a redirection, and that word push-up is so valid here because our brain is like a muscle, and you hear all of the little cliches, use it or lose it, da da da. These are all so true. We know through neurology and research that our brains are rebuilding on a daily basis, and we can regenerate brain cells and we can rewire that brain in the way that we'd like it to. So where we direct our attention is going to allow us to move forward, like progress or regress in this sense. And so we're doing that every time we do a redirect, we're pushing up. Every time we're focusing, we're pushing up, and that is kind of building that brain muscle, just like a workout. Another aspect, let me see. Okay, another aspect of mindfulness is gratitude. So I'm sharing this activity with you all. I'm here in Miami, and recently we have experienced Hurricane Dorian. Hurricane Dorian destroyed parts of the Bahamas, like the Abaco Islands and parts of Grand Bahama Island. So there are a lot of displaced survivors because their homes were destroyed, or they're seeking refuge in Nassau. Nassau's already a crowded city, and so there are no longer spaces for everyone in shelters in Nassau. So what we're seeing in South Florida is there are a lot of survivors here housed in Florida, seeking refuge from, I don't know, just finding shelter. So it was just last week that Barry University partnered with a local group and provided a support group for displaced survivors of Hurricane Dorian. We did this activity with them, and I felt like it was really cool to share with you all, because in the beginning of our group, we had a lot of strong emotions: fear, anger, sadness, grief. for loss of not only individuals, but homes and everything, like a lifestyle. So grief for everything. We had a lot of strong negative emotions. At the end of our therapeutic group, we did this grateful hand activity. And it kind of was an experiment. How are people going to take it? Because they're in this place that is hard to understand unless you've been there. And even so, it's very different. So we did the grateful hand, and this activity asks a participant to draw your hand on a piece of paper, and on each finger, identify something, we have 5 senses: touch, hearing, smell, taste, and sight. And from those senses, identify something that brings you joy related to that. So on your pinky, identify something that you can touch that has brought you joy or that can bring you joy. And so I've identified a kitten. I love to hold and to cuddle a little kitten. Other people had things like sand, like a person's hair, a soft blanket, something like that. On your ring finger, something that you can hear that brings you joy or you have a positive memory of. And I said bird songs. I love to hear birds chirping. Our participants said things like, before the storm, it would have been the sound of the ocean, but now after the storm, that really scares me. So I like to hear like the sound of a fan or the sound of something else. Then on your middle finger, something that you can smell that brings you joy. So I'm saying fresh baked cake. I love to go into a bakery. Our participants said multiple things like salt, sand, food, the perfume of a loved one, something like that. Something that you can taste that brings you joy. I said chocolate. A lot of our participants said chocolate. And then something that you see that brings you joy. And I said seeing a person that I love. And we had a total shift in emotion while we were doing this. So while we were able to have critical conversations during this, like maybe what brings us joy has changed because our area has changed, or because our recent experience, we might think of something differently, such as like, I used to love hearing the sound of the ocean. Now that gives me a trauma response. We went from those critical conversations to laughing and smiling and talking about good memories. We had participants high-fiving each other, saying, I can't believe you like that smell, stuff like that. So we saw a total shift in emotion. This shares with us kind of how impactful being aware of the present moment, how that can change our emotion in just a moment. We literally went from crying and hugging each other as a group to laughing, high-fiving, making jokes, smiling. When people share the things that they love and that they have good memories of and that brings them joy, you can see on their face how their affect has changed. Now, this is momentary, but if we continue practicing this, it can have a longitudinal effect. So I want to share that. You can bring that to your group or your individual client, or you can do it yourself whenever you need just like a reminder that there are things to be grateful for. Another aspect of mindfulness is guided imagery. So one of my favorite guided imagery practices is going to a peaceful place. This practice asks a participant to listen along to you as you read a script, that you prompt them to think about things that they see, hear, and smell around them. It asks them to imagine a peaceful place. And I'm wondering, do you believe we have time to do this one, or should we move on?
Do you know about how long it is?
It may take 10 minutes.
I wonder if we might want to maybe move along just so we leave enough time for questions and still stick within that hour time frame.
I agree. This is a good tool to use because you ask a person to imagine a peaceful place, and then you have a prompt that you read through. So you prompt them to focus on their breathing in and out, getting our group or getting our person into a really calm place mentally and physically. And then you begin your guided imagery. They imagine a peaceful place and you prompt them to think about what's around them, who is with them, what are they doing, what do they see, what do they smell, what do they hear. And throughout it, you're still prompting to focus on the breathing. You're prompting to focus on the imagery that they're creating in the mind, the memory, or just the imaginary place that they've created. Then after that, you direct your client or your group to bring their attention back to the present moment. You do this slowly, it's not abrupt, and then give everyone a moment to just think and be calm and silent with their eyes open. And then I usually open a discussion. Where did you go? Who was with you? Why do you think they were there? What significance do they hold in your life? How can you use this in the future? This is a prompt that allows a person to create a space in their brain that they can go back to anytime. I'm having a hard time falling asleep. I'm scared to have nightmares. I have a lot of stress running through my body. I can take my mind back to that peaceful place and continue that practice and calm myself down in the moment. For the Hurricane Dorian group, I chose not to do this because I was afraid that in the beginning stages of group that they would go to a peaceful place that may or may not be there anymore. So if their peaceful place is a place they love from the past and the hurricane has destroyed that, I didn't want to create a trauma response. However, I do recognize that if we maintain this group, that towards the end, this could be a really good resiliency activity for a person who has lost a person, a place, or a thing. So I think that this can help us move through grief, and it can be a slow exposure therapy as well. This is a mindfulness practice that can have a lot of benefits if used in the right time and if used really carefully and thoughtfully. So I think that if I did this with them, it will be way later and not in the beginning. But for my substance abuse group, they really loved it. Another one that is really good is muscle relaxation. So I've added a YouTube link that you can go to that guides you through a progressive muscle relaxation script. I love it. It calms. It's good for students in the classroom. It's good for groups. It's good for you to just do at home. And so now I'll open us up to questions. If anyone would like to share with us your experience of the breathing activity, I would love to hear that as well.
Thank you so much, Baxlee. That was great. We've got some time, so if anybody wants to type in some questions to the chat box, or if you want to share experiences that you've had, we'll take a couple minutes, give some people time to type. But one question I had for you was, I really appreciated how you talked about sometimes when you introduce mindfulness, there's a little bit of resistance if people aren't familiar with it. But a great thing about it is that it can be so individualized. And maybe if the breathing exercises aren't really for you, there's the like talking about the gratitude, or some people really like journaling. I wondered if you had used other types of methods with your clients that had been maybe a little bit, they've been more accepting of if they weren't quite into the breathing yet.
Breathing is always one of the first things that I teach because it is like in a foundation, like in just generally it will physically calm you down to calm your breathing. But some other things is bodily sensations. So if a client says, well, I'm having a roadblock, I can't do this at home, I have kids, I have this and that, I'm at work, I don't have 15 minutes to sit down and meditate or to breathe quietly, you can tell them to do other things. Like I have a list of kind of short mindfulness-based cognitive therapy activities, and one is to place your palms together at your chest and your heart. You notice the sensation of touch, how your hands just generally feel when they're touching together. You can do this if it was quiet or if it was loud, if you were alone or with another person. You can do it within your lap. So you're just feeling, how does it feel? Taking your mind away from ruminating on the past or stressing over the future and thinking right now, how does it feel for my hands to go together? If you don't feel totally uncomfortable, to move your arms up and place your hands in the middle of your chest. This way you can feel your heartbeat. So not only are you focusing your attention on how your hands feel together, but how my heartbeat is feeling, touching my hands that are touching my chest. And these things sound silly when I'm saying them out loud, but if you actually took time to practice it, you would start to notice how you did just take your mind away from whatever was triggering the worry or the stress and into a more peaceful state of mind. You can do that for 3 to 5 minutes. You can do something as simple as squeezing your hand together and opening it back up. You can do it in just walking down the street. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? And the practice of this is just focusing attention. Instead of thinking about anything else, instead of walking through on autopilot, I'm thinking, what do I see outside of my window right now? What do I smell on the street? Stuff like that. So how many times do we get in our car and we drive all the way to work or we drive all the way home and we don't remember anything on that drive?
Yeah, probably too often for me.
Yes. There's another one, anchoring. So putting your feet on the ground, moving your feet back and forth from your heel to your sole. You can even make yourself stand up and rock forward. And that's a technique to allow yourself, I look really silly doing this in my office. You can do it sitting or standing, and you're kind of just thinking about how does the weight feel on my heel moving forward to my toe. And this is an anchoring technique. So if you're dealing with a client who has extreme stress, so those of you in the nursing profession, so your client is nervous in the hospital. They don't like needles. How can you bring them to the present moment? You can do these mindfulness activities with them, with their hands or their feet or their attention. Focus on something outside of the triggering stimuli.
Look, we've got a couple just kind of comments about people really liking the breathing practices. They've used them with other people and they've been very successful. So it seems like they're really simple activities. You don't need a lot of training to do them right successfully, and they're easy to slip into your routine. I really like that about them too.
Yes, and I think that is something that I wanted to bring up before I get off today. Mindfulness is for anybody. You don't have to be trained in it to do it. I am only going to say that if you can do mindfulness practices, little interventions with your individual clients and with your group. But if you're going to actually provide a mindfulness-based reduction model, so stress reduction, relapse prevention, body image, eating, I think that you would want to be trained in facilitating that. And this is I know that today I'm just generally giving an overview. I'm kind of like putting your feet in the water, but not totally jumping in. And if anyone is interested into diving deeper into a model of treatment, I didn't know how specific our audience interest is in this, but if there's something more specific, I'd be happy to do that in the future.
That's a really great option too for our audience. If you are interested in learning more about a specific model, that could definitely be a topic of an upcoming webinar. So again, if you have the chance to fill out that survey at the end, just let us know what are you interested in and what would be more useful to you. The other thing I want to mention before I forget, Baxlee, you had mentioned that you'd be willing to share some of the handouts or instructions. So when we send out the email with the recording to everyone that's registered today, we can attach those. But if you are not on our list, or maybe you're watching this through a recording, if you would like to be added to our email list, feel free to reach out to us on our website at strengtheningtheheartland.com. You can get in touch with us, ask to be added to the email list, and then we're happy to provide those resources for you as well.
Over here on the last slide, I have links to different YouTube videos, and I've chosen, I think they are just 2 different superstar researchers in the field of mindfulness. One is as a clinical psychologist, and I think one is a neuroscientist, and I have their lectures, so they're long, they're like an hour long, but I wanted them to be here if you wanted to watch them. These people can explain mindfulness so eloquently. They've written books about it. So if you have spare time, haha, what is that? Watch these YouTube videos, and I think they're a good resource to share.
Yeah, the video that you shared with us today too, it looked like that website had some really fantastic resources for that as well.
Yes.
I don't see any other questions coming in, but of course, if something comes up afterwards, I'm sure Baxlee is more than happy to answer questions or provide resources. So we really appreciate your time today, Baxlee, and thank you to everybody who joined us this afternoon. And please watch for our next webinar.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks.